Hey guys, welcome back. It's Brad here with part 2 of our watercolor techniques and an experimentation video. So without any further ado, we're going to continue on. Sorry. All right. I'm not even going to edit this out. We're just going to keep going like it. I just wanted to show you. We're gonna just learn a new technique right now. I had to edit this out. I was just trying to do too many things at once. I was showing a variegated wash, and then I was like, oh, here's how the law of hydrodynamics works here. If you wanted to because I was just like sucking up some of the excess water with a dry brush, and I was like, but if you used a wet brush, it would do this. And I was like, it was just getting too complicated, and I was trying to explain something really hard. And then I was like, I was gonna dump salt on it. So I just wanted to scrap that. So if you're wondering how this square get here, that's what happened. So anyway, what I basically did here, I was just kind of showing there's different ways to do variegated washes. And so let's just start here with color, just like we do like with all of our other kind of washes. And again, it is helpful for them. I should probably use this, just a touch more water in here so we can get a nice bead on here. Okay. And what I wanted to show you guys, let's do this. There's different ways to do these. I'm just going to go straight in with this. I'm just going to show you. Variegated wash is basically where you add 2 or more colors into a wash. And so you can see how this is progressing here. Oops, sorry. Let's I'm just going to mix up a little. Probably should have had those mixed beforehand. Let's just grab just a touch of this. So this is nice for when you're doing like sunsets and things like that. Now this is one way. Now there's other ways where you can start kind of on the top and start from the bottom and then blend the two together. There's different ways to do it. But anyway, there's one. Now you can, so now you can see what happened here. There's a little kind of salt crystals from that one that got over here. So what I was showing over here when I did this before, well, let's just do some, just because I don't really care. It might not be wet enough. See, it's probably not wet enough really to do it. But once you get that really wet, it'll make these little, again, the salt will suck up the water and it'll pull it in there. So it did have to do with kind of this law of hydrodynamics. And it's just this idea that when two kind of different moisture, like levels of moisture meet, like one that's more wet and one that's less wet, like in an area like on your paper, the less wet or the more wet is going to flood into that, and the less wet is going to like suck into that. So you can see like here with the salt, it's the water is sucking up into it, so it's leaving that area. And I originally did this when I was doing like these washes, right? Let's just do make sure there's no salt on there. That's the danger with the salt. Be careful with it. Okay. Let's just put, oh man. Sometimes I do these things standing up. I don't take them very seriously, and then bad things happen. Always got to treat this watercolor medium with some respect. It'll turn on you if you're not nice to it. All right. Here we go. Anyway, and that would be fine. See, it's all just going to run down there. But I was just showing people, and the one that, kind of how to suck that up. Now, if this is more wet than this brush, so now if it's not wet at all, it's kind of like that dry sponge, like a very damp sponge will pick up more than a completely dry sponge. You guys experienced that? Well, this is like this brush. I haven't even used it ever before, so it still has that gum arabic on the side of it. So it's not even going to suck anything up. It's like it's not going to work. This brush I have used before. I haven't used it today, but I've used it before. See how it like just sucks up all that moisture? It's just ready to just suck it all up. It just kind of runs right into it. All right. So anyway, you kind of suck things up that way. Now, what I also showed in that last one is how do you kind of flood an area. So maybe this is too dry now, but if you were to touch like the bottom of this, you get those little balloons. Do you see that? I don't know. I'm doing this on purpose. Most people, you want to avoid this like 90% of the time. But do you see that? I think those are blossoms or balloons or something. Oh, I just did another one. Can't really see it. But see, I'm taking water, and instead of like sucking up like the edges right there, I'm kind of like introducing it. Oh, it's too dry up there. But you can see like what happens. Oh no, I guess it picked up a little bit. That's what happens. Most of the time in watercolor, you don't want that to happen unless you have some sort of design or something that you want. I don't know. You can use that on occasion, like for, I don't know, some sort of underwater sea painting technique or whatever it is that you want to create those kind of textures. But most of the time, people want to avoid stuff like that, and it is kind of fairly unpredictable. It's going to do something. You just don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to do. It's probably too. I guess it's probably too dry up there. But yeah, that's when you get those things that happen like that. Anyway, just kind of showing you that, because this is a really important idea that kind of that idea of like how wet or how dry an area, that this kind of hydrodynamics, how it works. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and because the rest of like these techniques really build upon that kind of idea. All right, now you're thinking that looks ugly. Well, whatever. We'll kind of play on there. We'll make these we'll just experiment on here. We'll still have some fun. Okay. All right, let's just carry on. Let's keep going. So I'm just wetting this one down, and it's really wet right now. So if you were to look at this, I don't know if you can see the shine. Let's see. You see how shiny it is? Yeah, that's wet. I'm gonna let that dry a bit before we do our work on there, because I want to show you like the difference between kind of wet on wet and when it's just damp. But let's get this one. We get this one really wet. All right, and sorry, I just used that brush. I know you don't have that one, but your other brush will work. In fact, let me just get this one going. I haven't even used it yet. Okay, all right, let's get this one going. Okay, now we're all playing with the same stuff. Okay, I'm not even going to use it for this. Let's just use this is my go-to, I think, for the class. I'm going to use this for probably 80% of what we're going to do in the class, maybe. All right, so here, this is still really, really, really wet. So let's just go ahead and just drop some color into it. Let's just see what kind of happens. I'm just going to make a line. See how it just runs all over the place? It's pretty cool, right? Let's do another one. Okay, let's try to make maybe a kind of a straight line. Just go. Let's do another one. And then let's maybe make some. some dots in there. All right, see how it just kind of runs all over the place. Those lines are pretty. I'm surprised they didn't run a bit more. Maybe it's just because the brush wasn't like super, it was more concentrated. Usually they will bleed a lot more than that. Maybe it wasn't totally wet up there. You can see it's like right there where there's more water. So that's kind of what we were talking about. It's just all just bleeding apart right there. But okay. And then if you were to ever just like, I don't even want to do it, but you can drop some water on there. See, and it's just going to just run like crazy through there. See, when we're talking about when it's more wet, see what it's doing? And if it was dry, if we used like a drier brush, it'll suck that stuff up. See, look at, it's going to run right into it. I can pick it up. So just kind of showing you what you can do with that kind of when it's that wet on wet. It's all just this kind of play with the moisture. All right, so that's wet on wet kind of techniques. Let's kind of wait for this one to dry up a little bit more, and you'll see like it'll act a little bit more like this, but it won't be totally wet, as opposed to when we work on something that's dry. Let's maybe try to recreate those same lines a bit. Make sure I get all this salt off here. All right, let's see, what did we do? We grabbed some of this, and I just made a line that, I don't know what it did, something like that. I don't remember exactly. Something, I don't know. But you see, this is a very wet brush, it's a loaded brush, but it didn't just like bleed all over the place like it did on there when it's very wet. So let's try. Let's go back with this. So you can see, like, even on that one didn't do a lot, like with the wet on wet. Like I said, it probably didn't get it really wet up there. But even there, it's like, that's like kind of that wet on damp. That's what that wet on damp kind of looks like. It's going to just be a little, those edges are just a little fuzzy. These edges are crisp and clean. All right. So, and again, it's probably no surprise, but when you put, they don't go anywhere. They just stay where you put them. Okay. So that's kind of the difference, the extreme difference between the wet on wet versus just kind of on working on wet paper versus working on dry paper. All right, and then if you, because we're just experimenting here, but if you wanted to kind of blend these out, you can just kind of soften some of these edges. You can kind of grab it, kind of loosen them up. And it's kind of fun. You can just kind of play. And then this is a pretty wet brush, but let's just kind of lower this. That's kind of saturated. You can grab, let's see, a little bit drier brush. You can touch the edges of things, and it'll kind of soften them up a little bit, kind of fade them out. Anyway, you can just kind of play around in with this. Just kind of learn to see what it will do, blend it all together. Anyway, let's just mix it all together. But that's kind of working on when the paper's dry. Okay? So, let's carry on, let's keep going. Alright, so this is a dry surface right here, and one of the things that I love about watercolor is to see the dry brush kind of technique. So this is what happens like when you're See it? Like it just, like when the moisture starts leaving the brush, it just kind of like just catches, just like scrapes across the surface of, see that? And so it's just like, as the moisture kind of leaves, it depends on how hard you press down too, but you get that, on a cold press paper, you get that surface to kind of show up that texture of that paper as you are, you can, if it's dry, I mean, you'll get it, but it just gets a little bit more scratchy. Anyway, it's just kind of showing you that. It's a fun technique, kind of allowing the moisture to leave the brush. So we're just playing around here. Almost looks like a Rothko painting right now, one of those color field paintings. If you guys like his work, I think it's okay. It's not my favorite. There it is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. These are paintings that look like this. Sort of. They're better than that, but okay. So one of the things that you can do, and this is the only reason why I was even putting down that to begin with, so I wanted to show you like bruising. So look at this. Now when that dries, you'll see all those lines. Now, because you're actually like kind of pressing, you're indenting the paper, and then it kind of groups in, it gathers into those kind of little depressions that you put in the paper, and so you can actually draw into your paper with the back of your brush. That's all I did there, or with some other kind of blunt object. Don't use anything sharp; you'll tear the paper. But that's called bruising, and it's a cool technique. You have to be careful because this is like irreversible. Like once you do it, it's there. And I learned that the hard way. I did that. In fact, you'll see that I do that in one of my demos in this class that I did. And I did it actually in the landscape demo that you'll see. But, and I regretted doing it immediately, but it looks okay. So it's not horrible. But yeah, you can't, once you do that, it's in there. Okay, so I'm going to go back in and play with, as these dry, I'm going to go back in and play and do some more kind of techniques and just keep playing in our spaces that we have. All right, so I'm going to just keep playing around on these spaces. I showed you on this one, I kind of screwed up this wash on purpose just to kind of show you that, that ballooning or the blossoming, whatever you want to call it. Now, and that's just by like adding more water into, like, I'm just flooded that area. So instead of like trying to suck up the excess paint that was down there, I put more water into it. And so the more water that was in my brush, it flowed up into that and it made that blossom. Okay. So, again, you can do that on purpose. Sometimes people like that, but most oftentimes that when you see that, that's because there was an accident. So, I did it on purpose here. At least that's what I'm telling people. So one other thing, let's just do this. Kind of practicing your brush strokes. It's good to kind of use your brush to kind of make like, very thin, or how do you make thicker ones? So just get control over your brush. You might want to just kind of practice like how do you make thick and thin lines. You might want to also, let's just change up the color a little bit here. Go like thick and kind of pull up, and then like in here, gonna pull out. So you can kind of just have control over your brush. So you can do it lightly, and then I want to get that brush a little bit thicker. Anyway, just kind of play around. Those are dry brush techniques. The surface was completely dry after I'd let this little area dry. Anyway, keep playing around in there with your. That's with a round. That's with our number 6. You can do the same thing with your number 2. Practice drawing, kind of making thin lines how do you make thicker ones? Also, you can do those same things in here too, like make it thicker, thinner, thicker, thin, or thicker again, and just by how you press up and down, you can kind of create neat marks that way. So that's another technique to practice. Okay, so now we have this. I did drop some water in there, made a little mark, but this was otherwise pretty flat right here. That was one of the first things I showed you. Now I just want to show you some other kind of things that you can do. Grab some this sponge. It's a natural sponge. I really don't like sponges that much, but I have one just to show you guys. So one thing you can do is you can dip it into your watercolor, and you can actually use it for like kind of drawing with, you know. So you can kind of create like little textures and patterns and stuff like that if you like. All right, you can also use it to suck up paint, and it will leave marks like that too. I don't have a wet on wet right now, but you can also just use it to suck up and from a very wet on wet wash, and it'll do that, much like we did with the paper towel, which was in here originally. We did it there too, but okay, just showing you guys some more techniques. Let's see what else I got for you. I got another technique. Let's try this one. All right, here we go. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you guys how to do use a scrubber brush. Now I happen to have one. I showed you guys this in the brushes video, but if you don't have one, I'll maybe show you how to make one. But I just want to show you guys how to use one. See, look at that. Is it showing up? Yep. Okay. So you can kind of get some clean water, scrub things out. Now sometimes people, try to make clouds or something this way. That's really risky business. I do not recommend that. Don't recommend this for like scrubbing out clouds. Personally, I don't. So I don't have a clean paper towel. I should probably get one. But you can. Like, see, I mean, that could be a convincing cloud. It's not really my preferred method. But, sometimes if you need to, very lightly, or like kind of lift out, like I said, like a white cap or something, it's nice because a lot of times these edges are pretty soft. So, use it however you want, but that's how you can do that with a scrubber brush. If you don't have one, which many of you probably don't, you might have an oil painting brush. This is pretty old, ratty old oil painting brush that I just had laying around in the studio, and the bristles are very firm here. So you could scrub this and it will come out. And if you have longer bristles, you can grab a utility knife and you can cut down. I'm not going to do it right now, but you could cut down at an angle, and you can get like kind of a nice sharp tip on these, and you can like kind of erase like kind of more lines out of it. But it'll work. That'll do it. Now I just wanted to do a little test here, and let's just see how our brushes. I don't think those are going to work. Let's try this. Let's just see if we can scrub it out with just like a regular brush. It's not going to be nearly as good, I can tell you that. They're just too soft and too wiggly, but they will lighten it up. Just so you guys could see this, it will kind of work here. Again, I don't know that you're going to get the exact desired effect that you're going to want, but you can lift out with just about anything. And so these work, but the scrubbers really work. They'll get back down to the paper, but you do have to be careful because you don't want to start ripping into the tooth of the paper. That's not a good thing. When you start tearing in, it doesn't look good. So you can obviously you can, because I just did it with one of these other brushes that's not a scrubber to a certain extent. All right, that's another thing, kind of just lifting out. Again, it's best to use clean water, and if you can, like a brush with a little bit firmer bristles, and you kind of like scrub that surface a little bit, and then just dab it up, and you'll get. It might not get back to the white of the paper, but it'll get pretty close. If you use a scrub brush, it generally gets pretty close to the white of the paper. Okay, moving on. Wet. See, now that's just wet on dry right here. But, you know, when you start, you know, kind of touching those corners and letting it kind of flow, that's when I really start kind of thinking about kind of watercolor. And I always think about it kind of letting colors flow into each other, you know. And so just grab some, I'm just going to grab some water here. It's not nothing else. There's no paint in this. But just kind of letting it, like, one kind of flow in to another. Now, it's only going to mix where the paper's wet. It's not going to mix. And you can actually pick this up and swirl it all around. So then that water or that paint is pretty much, it's not, I mean, if you tilt it enough, it will slide in. But it's pretty much just going to stay where it's wet, unless you really tilt it. And even if, like, I'll really try to tilt it there, and it will. It's kind of just damming up, like right there, because it just doesn't want to go there. But if you force it enough, it'll just have a break in the levee, and it will just all start kind of taking off. All right, and so, you know, just kind of keep kind of play around with these things, and just do some experiments. I don't know if I'm going to do too many more. I think this is, we're just about done kind of going over a lot of the techniques. There's a lot more to do, but we don't have time to do everything that's ever been done. All right, let's just all right, so these are still drying. I really want them to be totally 100% dry before I lift these. But while we're waiting, I might as well, this is dried out, I think, fairly completely. It really feels like it's pretty dry now. You want to be kind of careful when you do this. That's why I was letting you guys know how dry it was, because when you put like this masking fluid on there, some of you guys may end up getting stuff like this. I'm gonna see. I have a really old brush here. It's not a watercolor brush either. It's just a brush, and I'm gonna paint on here. Okay, I'm gonna let it completely dry, and so I'm gonna let this wait a little while too. In fact, probably a long while, because I want it to be completely dry when I go over it with a wash. That way, and then I'm going to let that completely dry. I'm going to be able to lift that up. Now, a lot of times people put this down first, excuse me, when you, on the white paper, just to preserve the white of the paper. But I want to show you that you can do it on any time, as long as the paper is totally dry. If there's moisture and stuff on the paper, sometimes it'll rip when you lift it back up. So you got to be careful with that. All right. So that's it for now. I'm gonna wait, and we're gonna come back and see those here. And just finally, I was like, man, if I didn't get any on this, not good. The paper was buckling pretty bad when I was doing that, so I didn't lay down perfectly flat. See, that one's not totally dry, and neither is that one. But you can see like what happens. Like you can see those marks in there after you kind of pull those off. So you can lay these down. Maybe we'll do it again. Maybe we'll practice. We'll throw these down. We can get better results, because I certainly have gotten much better results than these before. But what you can see here in that one, you can see it's kind of cool when you just set it down in a very wet kind of wash. You can get some kind of neat marks that just the paint kind of sucks up around the edges of it, leaves indentations. And again, you can do that with like string and stuff like that too. Didn't turn out all that great in here. Okay, but now I've got, look at this. Oh, toothbrush. Okay, I'm going to do some splatter up here, and I'll show you guys that. Now, you may want to, I just grabbed some scrap sheet of paper. here. Just kind of protect some of those other areas if you want, because it gets messy. All right, so in this case, we can just like you can see that it's pretty cool. All right, so I mean, you can do that with things that are not toothbrushes too, but you know that's why I showed you guys before in the brushes video. You know, you can get kind of creative. Just kind of playing around with this. And what I kind of wanted just to show you is this, we let it dry, and I was just layering, just like I just did right there. And so I'm just playing around just a little bit. If you don't like what's happening at any point, you know, always just try stuff. Like, this would be a good time to try to blot and lift. Just like we did that up there in the clouds, but you can also you can do that kind of stuff on purpose to create, you know, when you're layering, it creates you can get some of the textures from the paper towel in there too, for lifting. You can actually, if you want, you can actually stamp with it too in some areas. And you can do all sorts of just wild things. And so let's just try some more stuff while we're waiting. You know, and I like to, you know, try to just learn how to kind of draw with like kind of the edges of your brush. You know, it kind of goes in a line. It's easy to kind of drop things in that way. Again, don't like something, just kind of, if you got to be kind of quick about it. Watercolors, it matters. The time matters. And we've talked about this before several times, but about like charging. If you ever want to kind of bring another color and you just drop a kind of a loaded brush, I'm just dropping this brush. I got some of that red Madder Lake Deep or whatever it's called. You just drop it in there. In fact, let's drop in some Viridian in there too. And see how it stays in. It stays in these areas because it's wet. It's not going to leave those get into those dry areas, which is pretty cool. See how it just like you drop it in there and it just stays in there. It'll just keep running all the way in there. Okay, that's just what I wanted to show you, and you know, we're just gonna wrap up this video here really quickly. After we do this, so I gotta wait for that to dry just a little bit more, and then we'll be done. Maybe that I should probably flood this a little bit more. It's probably still not. That's probably what happened. This probably needs to be a little bit wetter. Just thinking about it. Let's grab some more of this. Let's get it really wet. I'm not even going to add more pigment. I'll just add some water into it. And I think this will help you guys kind of see what I was talking about. All right. Let's grab some more of those. Let's move that. I'm tempted to move on. I'm going to resist temptation. So right now, what we're going to try to do is this part right here. So just, you guys saw I put down that masking fluid. Now it's totally dry. So let's just get a nice, just put a wash kind of over it. I'm going to tilt this up just a little bit. You can see how it just goes right over that masking fluid. I'm really just Okay, so I just put this outside and let it sit out in the sun to help dry this a little bit more quickly. And so these, man, I don't know if they're dry. Let's do this first. I know this is dry for sure. This has been totally dry. So again, we'd put down some stuff already on here before, but let's just see. Yep, it worked. See, so it was right there where we hadn't done anything before. It was just white and preserved the white of the paper. And then this is capturing some of those light washes that we'd put on there before. Anyway, it protected it from the darker wash that we put over the top of that. Okay, and then so it did its job. All right, so that's the masking fluid. You know, you guys, we can also, by the time we're all said and done, you can knock off some of the salt that's on there and scratch it off, because it kind of sticks to it a little bit, but you just scratch it off and it will go away. So now let's take these off. All right, that worked a little bit better. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let's pull it up here. See that? That's kind of what it's supposed to do. Let's take this one off. Yep, right there. See that? See if you just you can leave these in there and kind of leave some neat marks. And again, you can do this with other stuff too. But you know, there's occasions when you can use this in kind of representational work too. It's not just kind of abstract marks, although it's cool for that. But you can you know, be creative. You figure out a use for it. All these different techniques, they're all good for something. And you just have to be creative. You'll figure out how to use them. So one last thing. Let's start. Maybe I won't do this whole thing, but let's. Oh yeah, should have probably gone this way. I can't remember which way. Oh, I really crossed this one. I can't remember which order I put them in. Okay. See? Well, anyway, you guys get the idea. So far, no paper tearing at all, which is good. Okay. Anyway, you don't need to see all this. These videos get long enough as they are. But you guys can see, I think I crisscrossed this like it was a cherry pie or something. It's ridiculous. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. This was a fun exercise for me. They always are. I do this every year, and it's still fun. And I still learn stuff every time. Like I got to learn about these paints. I'd never used these paints before. Well, prior to just the last week, but I also got to learn a little bit about this paper and the tape. And so I know I'm probably not going to use that tape anymore in this class, at least on this paper. Anyway, so pretty cool. It was a fun project. So all you have to do is take your camera, kind of get it nice and square in there, take a photo, snap, and then upload that, send it to me, and that's your assignment for this week. Again, have fun with it and take care. Oh, and by the way, some of this, what you're doing, it's going to be kind of a preview of what we're going to be doing next week when we start our non-representational painting, which is going to be lots of fun. You guys are going to love it. But stay tuned for that. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, wait till next week, or just go to the next video right now. Okay, take care.